Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
All right, welcome back to the Winners Playbook. My name is Steve Sloan. I'm here with my colleague Josh Lee. We're here to talk finance, money, and personal development and growth. Today we're all about millennials and are millennials behind the eight ball when it comes to finances and what's going on and how do they get ahead with everything. Mate, you're in that category. You are a millennial, and you just mentioned buying maybe a family home for yourself. So you're obviously doing well, but a lot of people out there who are millennials can't get across that line, because of the cost of living and, what's going on in the housing market and all the pressures of life in general. I suppose I'm going to ask you straight out, how, you're a millennial, what's the take on it? How have you got there? And, what are some of the challenges you've faced?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's a really good topic, this one. But if I take a step back to buying our first home, so we got into the first place when we were 21, and one thing I always say to people is it does always just seem to feel expensive. Like when you're buying, when I'm chatting with clients, like prices are continuously going up. Yes, they fall for periods of time, but it always just feels expensive, particularly buying your first home. So like we bought our first home. And it was, for roughly $560,000, and like that felt expensive at the time. And we were at an auction. We had no idea what we were doing, and we got the property, and we weren't earning great deals of money between us at the time. I've done a couple of videos on it. I think back then between myself and Alana, circa between us, we're earning about 110, and it felt like a lot. But I think that the key part to that equation is you just got to start somewhere, and then if you start comparing the average house prices around Australia and then maybe what you're earning right now, and you might think, well, I'm never just going to be able to buy or afford the average home, particularly if you start looking at Sydney, where it's the average house price is up over $1 million. And then you look at the average, wage here in Australia, and it's like you look at the multiples of wage to debt ratio, and it's just completely out of proportion. So no doubt it is definitely tough out there to get into them or buy your first home, but there's definitely a way. I think you got to just rethink about the way that you're doing that, and you don't have to set your sights on getting that forever dream home for the first one. And I'm just naturally a big fan of just stepping into the market, because your first home is generally never going to be your forever home anyway. So it doesn't need to be that big lavish home, $1.5 million or anything like that. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with getting into the market and having to sacrifice a bit and maybe not live right in near the CBD. Like our first place that we bought was 55 Ks out from the CBD, and I had to drive in every day to where the office was in Camberwell, and it was, a minimum 2-hour journey each way. Now I don't do that anymore, but it was a sacrifice I had to make for 4 or 5 years there, and it sucked, but I knew it wasn't going to be forever as well. So I think you just got to be realistic about that. And I can talk for, my generation, a lot of people that went to school with me, a lot of them are now buying from where I bought in the southeast. Now they're going out even further, say an hour out from where I was buying. So it's continuously pushing out because the average prices are going up, but they're doing that. And, the infrastructure and everything is keeping up, so you can still get trains and everything into the city. But I think just you don't have to think about your first home purchase as your forever home. And ultimately, I believe, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think we'll touch on some of that around, increasing income and so on. But Steve, you've been on this earth a lot longer than I have, so I know you're not in the millennials or the Gen Z category. But what's your take on your experience of seeing over the years and prices fluctuating, inflation, cost of living is obviously high right now, so interest rates have gone up, although they're not high relative to where they've been in the past, but compared to where they were 2-3 years ago, interest rates are right up, and everyone's feeling the pain out there. So what's your take on all of this?
First, thanks for that nice comment about my age, Josh. Welcome. It's always appreciated. Look, it's tough. There's no doubt about it. Cost of living, house prices, and everything else. It is tough. Like we can't probably ignore the fact that everything's got very expensive, and clearly we all need a house to live in, and that's really painful for people because there's the current situation is you're either paying a fortune on your mortgage or you're paying a fortune on rent, and it's taking a lot of your income away. So, and when you take a lot of your income away for those things that are essential, it's really frustrating because then you probably can't do the other things you want to do. So, I totally get it. I totally get the situation. I totally get the frustration, and you're right. Like when I bought houses, which is not too long ago, it was expensive. It is expensive, and you've got to really sacrifice to get there. I had to sacrifice a lot to get there, to get houses and buy property. And it's always going to be expensive. And look, I think we're probably going to get to this. You've got to look at other ways to get there. You've got to open up the thought process of how you're going to achieve what you want to achieve, and don't get too set on one way of doing things. And what happened in the past and what other people have done in the past may not work today. So you're right. I think it's looking outside the box. And a prime example of that, I think, is we deal a lot of, you and I deal with a lot of clients who want to buy property. We do a lot of buyers agents as well. And I think, in the past, it was always the capital cities buy, Sydney, Melbourne, or whatever, Brisbane, bit of Adelaide, hopefully. But now, clearly, you've got to look outside those cities. So now if you want to build a property portfolio and you want to live in a certain area, absolutely, that's your goal. But let's have a plan to get there over time, right? So let's buy in the country of Northern Territory or Southeast Queensland, out there, somewhere like that, or in outer parts of Adelaide, for instance. Build your portfolio to then allow you to buy in the spots you want to. So I think it's a different strategy now to what it was in the past, and you've got to be patient, which is key. I think the patience is a big one, and patience in investing is absolutely key. And I think the thing that really does people over with investing is patience. To half the time, like they're so impatient, and they see we've spoken about this before, the flashy cars that they see on social media and all that garbage. To be honest, it's probably lies more than half the time. You've got to be just patient and just have a good plan in place. Be patient, invest for the long term, and you get there. It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah. I think it's a good point. It's like it is a real reflection of today's society, and I can't lie. Like my generation, it's like that. Most of us are impatient. We want it now. We don't want to wait. Don't want to put in the work for it. Why can't I have it now? And that's I think a massive cause of it. But I like what you're saying there. There's definitely a way, and it doesn't have to be the standard typical way to buy a property. So like you said, you could be buying in those more rural areas, and a good strategy that I always like to throw around with clients as well is that whole rent vesting idea. So maybe, you want to live in a certain location, like close to the CBD where work and everything is. So maybe you just rent a small, cheap 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment with your partner or whatever it may be. You get a share house. I've seen people doing that with friends, spread out the rent, have a real low cost there, but then you buy a property outer in the outer suburbs that, like we're spoken about, requires sacrifice. Like if you're going to be out drinking and partying and you're at the pubs every and you're blowing your money, well, don't whinge and cry that you can't save money if you're out spending $400-500 on the weekend and you're blowing that when you could easily be not doing it, which I know is the boring thing, but it's how you realistically get to where you want to be to begin. And even throwing in another idea, and again talking about my own situation, buying the first property. You obviously require savings to buy a property. If you're buying a home to live in, there's a bunch of different government schemes out there, which if anyone wants to chat about those, you can reach out to obviously any of the advisors or even speak with Eddie, the mortgage broker in Link Wealth Finance. He does all the finance and helping people buy their first homes or more properties. There's a bunch of different government schemes out there. But talking to my own situation is if you're younger and you got your parents, hopefully your parents have got a bit of equity in their home. Maybe they're still working. You can use a guarantor arrangement. And it worked really well for us buying our first property because we did have the savings there to put down the 20% deposit and so on. But we didn't want to because we wanted to spend a bit of money on the property. It needed a bit of like landscaping. We needed to buy all our furniture and things like that. So we were in a fortunate position where Alana's parents actually went guarantor on the loan. So essentially we didn't have to put in as much of a deposit. I think we put in maybe around sort of 5 to 7% as a deposit. They secured the rest against their property. We had to be able to still service the total loan as well, though. So it's really important to understand with a guarantor arrangement, you still need to be able to repay the loan amount. The parents aren't actually repaying anything; they're actually just putting essentially equity up. So you still need to have borrowing capacity and
Yeah.
income to repay the loan. But that can be another great way of getting into the market if you don't have much of a deposit, but maybe you're earning really good money between yourself and your partner. Maybe consider a guarantor arrangement. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of different ways to get out there and do it. But again,
Yeah.
it's just, I think the most important thing is you just actually need to have a plan in place around what you're actually trying to achieve and not making those, sporadic decisions, because buying property is not something you should consider lightly. It's not like going out and just buying a car. You're probably spending $500,000 plus, so I think you definitely want to get a bit of a plan in place there. But we've spoken about, prices going up, everyone talks about wages stagnating. And I know we have touched on this before, but what are some of the go-tos in terms of, growing income? What are some of the go-tos that you sort of have conversations with clients around, Steve?
Yeah, so if it's not passive income, so creating passive income through investing, right? And clearly, we're talking about an age group that probably surplus income's not a lot. So to create passive income through investing is difficult, right? And I get that. So it's probably more of a journey, that one. Look, clearly, it's something on the side. It's a side hustle or it's a business. That's the go-to for creating extra income. So if you're sitting there today and going, right, I want to buy a house, I've got a set level of income, and that's probably set if you're in an industry that, nursing or whatever it may be, it's a sort of set level of income. Well, we need to think outside the box. We need to think business. We need to think, how do I create that extra surplus income? There's hundreds of different businesses out there, online or, start researching what you can do, what interests you. I think, my advice to people is, what interests you? Let's have a look at that industry. What can we do to create more income? Is it just driving an Uber on the side for a couple of hours every now and then? Is it just going? Have you got a room somewhere that you can rent out, and we drive really our own income, right? The more we want to earn, the more you and I have to think outside the box and drive the businesses harder. And that's been like that for me for 20 years. So I don't earn an income unless I constantly look at different ways to create wealth, right? And whether you're earning $1 or $100,000 or $1 million, constantly driving that forward is up to you. You've got to do it. And if you want to take responsibility, and if you've got goals for yourself and you want to hit those goals, well, that's your option. Create more income, and the best way to do that, I believe, is through business.
Yeah, a big thing you said there is just actually taking personal responsibility for your situation in life, and that's the biggest one I think that a lot of people get stuck on, is on everyone else. It's the government, it's the environment, it's all the other external factors, had a crappy upbringing or whatever it may be. But realistically, you at any point in time in your life, I truly believe you can always change. But if you really are struggling, that's where you definitely want to be seeking mentors, getting around better people that have done the things that you maybe want to be doing. And who you surround yourself with, I think, has a massive impact on the trajectory of your life. And the other part of it as well is, if you're younger, you're still probably going to be educating yourself, maybe getting through your studies or doing some further education, which can naturally get you into better roles. But I think you need to go into it with your eyes open, because I have seen people do degrees and then they don't even go into that field whatsoever, and then they've racked up a HECS debt and then they completely start in a fresh field, and that degree has nothing for them. So trying to think about that on the front end, or if you're interested in a particular industry, maybe get some knowledge of, is doing these extra qualifications, is it going to better me? Am I going to be able to progress into certain roles and things like that? And naturally educating yourself is not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be formal studies. That could be just reading books like how to start investing, business books, mindset, whatever it may be. There's 1,000 different books there that you could be reading. But I also want to throw in one of which, if you don't really know what you want to do, I don't think there's actually a better field of work to be in if you're purely talking from a monetary standpoint. If you're not in business or trying to get into business, being in some sort of role that has some sales capacity to it. And what I mean by that is, it's going to allow you to ideally be in a role where you can dictate your earnings capacity. And then if you're in some sort of a sales type role, and that doesn't need to be selling cars or anything. Like, I've got plenty of clients that are in IT in all these different sectors. There's a sales aspect of their role. And then if they're getting out and generating more business for the business that they're working for, they're getting all of these bonuses and their earnings are kind of uncapped because it's really dictated by them and the amount of work that they're willing to put in. So if you can find an industry or find a role that actually has a bit of that sales aspect to it, I think that can also really help, because if you're just stuck on a flat wage and you can't do anything about that, there's nothing wrong with that, but it can definitely limit, your ability to, well, it does. It limits your ability to generate income unless you can step up the roles in what you're doing. So I think that's just something to always consider as well, as if you're not sure what you want to do, maybe consider some sort of sales role. And I don't think there's nothing better than actually having some sales skills behind you, because it doesn't actually just help in terms of being able to generate more income. I think it actually, funnily enough, helps in every aspect of your life, being able to sell yourself to the boy or the girl that you're trying to date, or whatever. It could be any aspect.
So there's definitely options. If you're sitting there and you sort of feel like you're in a rut, definitely talk to people, talk to us. There's options for everyone, no matter what position you are in life. You've just got to find the right way for you and look outside the square.
Yeah, agree. And, final points on that, I would say, what are some real actionable items then people can take away from this? For one, you need a good cash flow system just in place to begin.
Yep.
So you got to know what money's coming in and what's going out. So look at your ins and outs, do a basic budget. There's an easy budget spreadsheet you can get on moneysmart.com.au, the budget planner. Download that. It's free. Actually fill in where your money's going, because you got to know where your money's going if you're going to plan out to buy a property, save some income. So you got to get realistic. So getting a grasp of, I think, your cash flow is a really good start. Getting some goals in place. You touched on that. You want to be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for these things to drop in your lap. That property's not going to fall in your lap unless you're lucky enough. And unlucky enough as well, someone maybe passes away in your family and you inherit a property. But I'm not one, you don't want to be banking on that. And I don't think anyone wants to sort of think about that as a situation. It's a reality of life, but don't wait for anything to sort of fall into your lap. I think you just got to ultimately just take personal responsibility, get out there and do it, and ultimately take control of your outcomes. Is there anything more you would add to that, Steve?
No, mate, just, your plan in place, patience, and a bit of sacrifice, you'll get there.
Yep, agree, Steve. Guys, that's all we got time for today. Thank you, everyone that listening. If you are getting value out of this, 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, because it does help us out a lot. We're all over the socials, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, etc. So you probably see our heads popping up all over the place, and definitely subscribe to Steve's newsletter as well. We do put out a couple of posts every week. And of course, if you ever want to chat about your personal financial situation, you can jump on the website, have a look at all the advisors, come through for a 15-minute chat, which is of no cost. And we can always just chat about your situation and let you know if there's any advice or value that we can actually add to your life whatsoever. But besides that, Steve, I'll see you on the next one, mate.
See you, mate. Bye.
Catch ya.